Hello everyone, and welcome to the next tutorial in the series of tutorials for different things that we use on MASA. This one will be dedicated to the just the basics of GitHub, so getting it installed, getting an account set up, and connecting to our repo. There's a couple things that we won't cover in this video that you might run into, like some errors and things like that. We might do a follow-up video, or for any of those specialty questions, you can always ask your leads. So let's get started here. So the program that we're going to need is GitHub, and we're going to need a program called Git Bash in order to access it. So GitHub is sort of like it's a central repository for a bunch of files that multiple people want to access. So instead of having our files for all of our PCB designing and routing and things like that, instead of having that all locally on somebody's computer, they're all stored up in the cloud on GitHub servers, and then we can all pull them ourselves. So we can find them in this nice little web window if we need to get here, assuming that you have access to the SharePoint. You can see we've got our little fun thing down here. You can just hit the MASA-D GitHub and we'll bring you right here. We work in 2020, 21 PCBs, depending on when you're accessing this video for knowledge. It might be later. You might have a different folder. So if we take a look in here, you can see all of our different files here. So we want to actually add these to our desktop so that we can access them. We're not going to be doing that in here at all. What we're actually going to want is we're going to want a thing called Git Bash, and we're going to want the download. So from git-scm.com, we're going to hit here, and assuming that you're on Windows, you want the Windows. Assuming you're on Mac, you want the Mac. And if you're on Linux, the same thing. I'm going to be doing this tutorial on Windows. This will be for version 2.31.0. So you click this install. It's about 100 megabytes. I installed it earlier. Or actually, it's not about 100 megabytes. It's about 50. My mistake. Once you get your .exe, we're just going to double click it. You're going to hit yes, so that I don't know if you guys could see that on the recording, but it just required administrator permission. Sorry. So you just hit yes. And then you're going to say yes to the license there. Ask which components it wants. All the default ones are fine. That's everything we need. This should be fine here. We're going to let Git decide. Default branch name is master, which is what it is in our program. We're going to use a command line. Open SSL library. Windows style is fine. And we're going to use MINTTY. And just default for git pull. We're not going to do anything fancy for this. And we don't need any credential helpers. There is something special that we'll have to do with credentials, which we'll talk about in a bit. And enable file system caching is fine. And we don't need this. Alright, so we're going to hit install here, and it won't take too long to install. There will be a bit longer part here when we're cloning the repository, in which we'll go over a couple things. So we'll just wait for this to fully extract. Alright, now that it's fully extracted, you don't need to review the release notes, and you don't need to launch it yourself. You just hit finish. So now that we have this installed, how can we actually use it? Like I said, we didn't open it before. We can just right click and then we can choose Git Bash here, and then it will just open a little bash prompt. You'll see this is command line. Don't be scared. It's not very complex what we have to do. We'll just have to do a couple things. So the first thing that we want to do is we actually want to get the files onto our desktop so that we can use them. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a command called git clone. So what this will do is it will take the files, it will find them on the remote server and bring them down to us. So we're going to need git clone, and then we want the actual name of our repository and the path. So we're just going to go up here, copy our URL, Control C. This Git Bash does not take input from Control V, so you just need to right click and paste. And then you can hit enter, and it will start cloning into a folder that it will create. I put mine on my desktop so I can see it easily, but you can put yours wherever you'd like, as long as you know where it is. Now this will take a bit of time. As you can see, we've got a pretty large Git repository here. So we're going to go over the account setup. To actually download this, you don't need to have any special permissions. However, when you start pushing things to the GitHub, like all of the work that you've done, you're going to need permissions in our GitHub. So you need to create an account with GitHub. You can just make one with your university email. It's pretty simple. And then one thing that you do have to do, as of August 23rd of this year, 2021, GitHub is going to require two-factor authentication. So what you have to do is you have to go over to Edit Profile, Account Security, and then you want to add two-factor authentication. And one of the good things that you can do is you already have to have the Duo mobile app for the university. It'll give you a barcode here. You can scan it with that app, and then you can do your two-factor right in there. This doesn't actually take up any extra time because you will only have to log in once per device, and then you won't have to log in again. So let's check in on how our thing is doing here. We're at 40%. All right. So let's talk a bit more about the web interface for the GitHub. So we've got all of our different repos here. Like I said, we're working in this one. One thing that we do to not have everyone working in the same place in case something breaks is we have everyone working on their own branch. So you see we've got master branch, then we've got one for the air brake motor controller, the AC/DC, the biological payload data consolidator, and so on. This is to keep issues from impacting other people. So for example, if we've got Josh working on the ABC and he completely bricks that portion of it, we could just restore it from another branch and no one else is impacted. But if we have multiple people pushing to the same branch, you could overwrite a file accidentally that somebody else needs and they could lose a bunch of work. There is a lot of stuff in here. We can see the commit history and we can restore. But it's just a bit of a pain, so we'd rather do it this way and not have any issues. Let's see how we're doing here. Still at 43%. Another good thing to do while we're waiting here for this is we can look up some of our basic Git commands. You can just look this up on Google. Just search, Git command help or Git commands, and we'll pull up here. This is just the first list that was here. And this will give you a lot of different commands that we need. We don't need to have a lot of them. We're just going to use 4 primarily, once you're done with this first time install, that is. However, some things, when there are errors, you've got to do certain things, like you've got to have a force push and things like that. When those situations arise, it's best to talk to your lead or someone else who knows what they're doing for the GitHub, and we can help you fix it. But for this basic one, we're just going to be using a couple things. So we'll talk here. We're going to need this git commit-m. We're going to need this git add. We've already used the git clone here. We're also going to need the git push. And then we'll also need the git pull, wherever that is on this list. Here we go, git pull. And you'll see there are some other things like git merge that we use when we're combining the branches into one branch, so we once everyone's done, we can just edit things on one place. It's much nicer that way. Alright, so this is still copying here. So I'm going to pause the video and then we will resume when this is done. Alright, and we are back and it is completely cloned into our local folder, so we can now go take a look at that. We can minimize this here and open up our folder. Now we can see all the different files that we have on that web interface, but now we have them locally. So one thing that we do need to do at this point is we need to close this Git Bash because it's on the desktop, and we want to right click and we want to Git Bash in this folder. You'll see the directory changes and now it knows that we're in this repository, so we can do certain things here. Now the first thing that we want to do is run master branch. Normally we're not going to be working on master branch, so we're going to change to a branch by using the git checkout command. The branch that we're going to choose is just completely arbitrary for this video, but we're going to go to the air brake motor controller. One of the things that you always do whenever you switch to a branch before you start work is you do a git pull. Even if you just get pulled, do it again just to make sure. Whenever you see already up to date or everything is up to date, then we're all set. So now that we've get pulled, we can leave this and we can go do all of our work in Altium or whatever program you're using. If you're doing programming, then any IDE that you're using or anything else, SolidWorks or anything else. Then once you're done, you've made all your changes to your files, so you've saved all your files and everything, and now you're ready to push all your changes. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to say git add -- all. Now this will add all of the files that are in here, and it will say, okay, all of these files are new. I'd like you to add them to the repository. And then after that, you can say git commit -m, and then you can put your message for commit. This message usually says, what you did for a push, so that we can always trace it back. If something broke on a certain push, we can go back to it. For this, I'm just going to say this is for video example. Alright, And now we're up to date with origin/ABC. You can see there's nothing to commit because I didn't make any changes to any files. But after we commit, then to finalize our changes, we git push. Now, this is where it's going to ask you to log in case you haven't logged in before. And like I said, once you log in once, then this won't be an issue. But you just type in your username, and then you type in the password. Invalid username. All right, let's try that one more time. All right, 1 second while I figure this out. All right, and we are back. We're going to git push here. We're going to put in our username, and then we're going to put in our password. All right, and then that went through. The reason was because just recently we had to enable that two-factor authentication for Git. After you do that, you cannot just use your regular password when you're logging into Git Bash. You're going to need something else. So when you go into your profile, if you go into Developer Settings, Personal Access Tokens, Generate New Token, you can generate yourself a new token, and it will give you a long string of letters and numbers, and then you can use that as your password. And then as you can see, we get pushed and everything is up to date. Now, if we go back here to the ABC, our push isn't shown because we didn't make any changes, but if we did make a change, it would show your name and then your message from your commit-m and then how long ago it was. So that's the basics of the push and pull and then checkout, and also generating your personal access token. As the two-factor authentication thing is very new, as it hasn't taken effect yet, this might need to be updated in the future, but if it is, that'll be in a second video. But that should be all the basics that you need to get started with Git. Good luck, and then if you need any assistance, just make sure to ask a lead, and we can make another one of these videos, and we can help you out in person. Thank you very much.